So today I'm going to be sharing for yesterday, and then I'll probably do another one for today. Didn't have a chance yesterday to do a video. So this is what I wrote 2 years ago. There's a practice called releasing. These are things, literally, it's not the same thing as stopping something. It's the same thing as stopping holding on. So what does that mean? That means you ask yourself, what do I need to release? What do I want to release? And the first and foremost things that start to come up, it can be any kind of information. It can be information that makes sense. It could be feelings. It could be ideas. So I'm just going to read it as a practice. This is as a model because each person's going to look very different. You might have motions, gestures that you make. You might have a few words and that's it. Give it a shot. So, yeah. Men who hurt me privately without witnesses, because he could, where it hurt. He left me. I felt defective. I did it to myself for his sake too. I felt destroyed for so long, hurting in my most sensitive places, hurt myself in order to be numb to other pain I was experiencing. So releasing misusing power. Okay, committing to someone at the expense of committing to myself. Losing my dreams and opportunities doesn't help someone if they aren't at the same time learning to do it for their own self with more efficiency. So they're less drained in other areas over time. They can get more on their own to effectively work with and be supported and connected. So this is called self-sabotage. Or it can be called self-sacrifice. And it's flavors of something. So obviously we're talking about patterns. Next is rushing. Because someone wants security through even false certainty. This is an idea I spoke about in the past, which is where we want to know even if we know the wrong thing. We just want to be in the know rather than not know, even if by not knowing we'll learn the truth, and by knowing we're knowing something false. It doesn't have legs to stand on. So this will lead to overcompensation, hiding, trying to get away with it, even cheating and lying, even projecting, and for sure disowning parts of the self. Next, we have letting the universe figure things out and not decide to do it in my own way, even if it's pushing me inside to do what I've done in the past, because I don't know what's best long term. So, not letting the universe, sorry, I forgot one important word. When I'm not letting the universe figure things out and I do not decide to do, and thus, so in other words, refusing to surrender is a pattern, because it feels like defeat. It feels like I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, right? Then we have a piece of me that shuts down. Into many fragments when I'm afraid of being hurt inside myself, so that I don't have to disappear, but can have edges that protect me from going past the line that gives me an identity. And this is when we would call it self-othering. And honoring the buffer zone is a way to not abuse and misuse at times where it would be the healthiest, most beneficial not to be so isolated in what we call no man's land. Or on the other hand, to be so sure of exactly where I begin and end, the borders of the individual existence, letting others explore my new territory together with me could be scary. It could be that I'm used to charting and measuring myself in great detail before I allow others to be in the terrain. But it's a false sense of security because unpredictability is always a constant. And it's how I interpret it, what meaning I give, that will impact its effect on me when I'm expecting or relying on or preparing for predictability. Achieving the desired outcome can also be happening with greater trust of others, thereby inclusive of their time and energy versus, doing it all myself instead of the way I'd have to do it with others. It can happen a different way. And we might say that this is like stubbornness versus rigid stubbornness versus ability to compromise, right? And this is the novelty of unpredictability, because ultimately we get to where and what we are aiming for with the company and help of others, instead of the control, having all the say over it, the how, the path, the work, the approach. And we move from I to we, which is when we let the ultimate first original other, this is God, source, also be a we, our partner. So this is like not considering God's will. How can we consider anyone's will? And this is the idea that it's not always my own credit or blame. We can all share responsibility. So this is about not sharing, responsibility. I want to say two things here. In the previous other pattern, I said ability to compromise. Now I'm saying responsibility. I want to pay attention to the word ability. Often we're not born with these things. We learn them and we strengthen them. And so, for example, when we do it together, the Creator gives time and energy toward the aim. But the way is via unpredictability. That's, sharing the say, the control, the credit, the blame, this idea. And now, in terms of after releasing things, the next step of what I did was looking into being a woman, being a well. When I release, now we can see what comes up from the wellspring. So men try to, and again, this is what came up in me. These are like the new patterns that are able to come in when we clear out the old. So remember, it's about we were holding on, letting go, whatever comes up for you. And next, it's about allowing to emerge. So this is all about allowing, to emerge what will anyway. So thinking about how men try to satisfy their needs when they take, not thinking of the well for others, and thirst, not respecting limits, they may take too much. Or the idea of focus, protection, care, and nurture, and maintenance for the well, not exploiting it, not contaminating it, not disrespecting it. Even mistaking the well itself for the bit of water being desired is bad math, because the well itself can keep giving more versus the 1 cup you got is just 1 cup of water. You don't mistake the well for that 1 cup. You don't treat the well the way you would treat the 1 cup. The well is the source of the 1 cup. Additionally, the idea of a naked queen, that we're like getting this wellspring, nothing of our own, making everything better. And with space, time, money, nature, skills, tools, these are things that bubble up through us, stream through us. And the safety and health, kind of on one side, and then on the other side, pleasure and purpose. This idea that the water gives pleasure and gives purpose, but we have to keep the water safe and healthy. Additionally, if we have some level of control and trust, We can be humble versus if we don't have control, we're always going to feel humiliated. If we don't have trust, we're always going to feel humiliated. No one should be humiliating the well, right? So that's the idea. And then also the sensitive point is where we get the hurt and the enjoyment. So this is whether it's parents or exes. I like to look at things sometimes like destroyed is on a different whole page than defective. Destroyed is where somebody came and, the water is now only dribbling because they just like caused it to have something where it dried up because of chemicals that were put in. Versus defective, it had a deposit of something and it was never drinkable water. Feeling like a calcium deposit, too much. Rabbi Nachman says, the feminine waters is to ask without embarrassment. And when we feel directly or through, or we could feel through this like buffer or through it's almost like a condom of life. Albert Einstein says imagination is above intellect because intellect is what you know and imagination is what you could know. Everything that you could possibly imagine is more than anything you could possibly know, because image is not always exactly a picture or a face. It could be the image of your grandmother's home. That's what I heard someone say once. Or the image of cookies baking. You get, these are transient sort of, the way we say a picture is worth 1,000 words, that kind of vibe. And then also this idea of alone time versus company. Late night, early morning routines, the ability to keep in the budget of energy, money, etc. And of course, finding richness even when in poverty, richness of having siblings, of having both parents married to each other, of having a mom who makes delicious food, of having a warm, cozy bed, things like that, of having pets, finding enrichment in life. And there's no ownership that's without responsibility. I mentioned earlier not sharing responsibility, so we share ownership instead of trying to own all the parts. Instead, we can flow. There's a preciousness that's so high. It's it asking right away for attention or help, whatever it is that we need. We are so precious, and the stuff, the partner, the possessions, the home. There's how much do we want to own? We're going to be responsible for it, or how much could we just be with? And this is how we flow above the planets. There's living beings in us. We have, billions of bacteria in our bodies, in our cells. And this is like making us each a planet. And then we're also walking around. The planets stay in orbit. So we clearly have so much responsibility. We can move around. And there are literally human-made satellites that are circling our planet. While the planet stays on its axis, that it's almost overwhelming. It's awesome. The shell has been, and for me, my father, the ruler. There was pressure on me, blocking me when I disagreed. There was accusations and projections. I felt I was exposed to such small-mindedness, an inability to consider different angles and see the center, core, common, same point that or respect the limits and feelings and needs in the self and in the other. My father, this is the shell, this is the edges, was so harsh and critical of me for every little mistake, jumping to conclusions and petty and measuring, so resistant to growth, and I felt stingy and I got silent treatment and other tactics to prevent me from being heard or validated or understood, and only wanted me for my usefulness. In other words, why am I talking about this theme? Healing my own wellspring means if my father couldn't appreciate the wellspring and tried to block up the well or tried to hurt the well because all he wanted was a cup of water, if he didn't get it now and what he wanted, it wasn't perfect or it had a little cloudiness, so there was something different than he thought he needed, this caused me to go into a shell, right? So this is blocking off. And finally, to end this, there's this idea that the mind is learning in the moment through actions that teach in the present what the reality is. So I can be my own father. We talk a lot about remothering, but I can also be my own father. I can validate myself. I can be not petty or measuring or harsh or critical. I can not block myself in or put pressure on myself. I could agree with myself and give myself benefit of the doubt rather than accusations. And I could do that in the moment. Instead of projecting and onto myself bad intentions, I could consider different angles. And I could not look at every little mistake. Rather, I could be willing to grow and communicate with myself instead of the silent treatment, and not use tactics, and to really respect my needs and feelings and others as well, obviously, because it's so dangerous to be addicted to knowing, when what we're knowing could be false information. It's dangerous. So I will stop here and wish you a blessed day and a beautiful evening, morning, whatever it is when you're listening to this.